The Second Galactic War has developed into a much more brutal conflict than it was almost a year and 8 months ago when it began. Both of the original factions having developed new enemies, multiple sub-factions for both the bots and bugs, even developing to take new landscapes in the form of super Earth colonies and megacities, plus the addition of the third faction even going as far as attacking the Heart of Democracy, invading Super Earth. Flashback to the 01.001.0 patch, every troublesome enemy was reined in from being excessively oppressive, and almost every enemy had slight touches on total health. This blanket balance patch revitalized the fun while keeping the satisfying challenge Helldivers 2 was known for. However, this blanket balancing patch was some time ago. While Arrowhead has continued to implement adjustments to the individual problem children, there hasn't been another blanket balance patch for enemy balance since, and because of that, some enemies have escaped much needed nerfs and tweaks for some time. And while I may not be the level 150 solo deathless super Helldive level of skill, I was there for the invasion of Super Earth, the first expeditions into the Gloom, the Illuminate's return, the construction of the DSS, the collapse of Meridia. I was even there when Shriekers were thought to be a myth spread by dissidents, and was even there trying to avenge the Fallen at Malevolent Creek. I regularly launch at level 7 alone, and I've certainly spent enough time on the front lines to know a few things need addressing. Super Chicken Walkers that launch more explosives than all of World War I, Vlad the Impaler bugs being able to strike after death, balls of living flesh being better chargers than chargers while being absent of armor, and the entire Illuminate faction being relatively unchanged for balance since their introduction, even though they are straight up not fun or even satisfying to defeat in my opinion. So let's discuss the problems with some of the overbearing enemies within Helldivers 2 and how I would want them reined in to keep them challenging while not being oppressive but also not making them too easy. To start off with the notorious headache, the Warstrider, aka the Super Chicken. A touch on its firepower and its durability could be on the table. When it comes to Warstriders, if you have nothing higher than medium penetration, you might as well hold your fire. The entire body, top to bottom, is all heavy armor, even the two hip joint weak spots between its legs and what we can call the crotch. It is in stark contrast to the rest of the automaton forces, as every bot has some sort of weak spot that is vulnerable to less than heavy penetration. The rear armor of tanks, the vents on the back of hulks, the lower half of scout striders, even factory striders can have the nose turrets destroyed with the rear engine weak spot and the belly panels that can be hit with medium pen weapons. So an honest fix for the Warstrider would be a weak spot that is vulnerable to lighter penetration weapons while the rest of it remains armored and tanky. It would offer a solution rather than doing your best to not be killed while waiting for a cooldown to finish. Speaking of not being killed, its weapons are pretty oppressive to the point it's nearly tyrannical. A single shot from the Warstrider's dual fusion cannons can ragdoll a Helldiver. Add to it a lengthy burst with only a few seconds cooldown between, it's a rough escape to cover, which cover alone can't help you either, because you can expect a volley of 16 grenades heading your way momentarily, and if the first 16 don't get you, there's another volley just a few seconds behind the last one. I am fine with the damage output and volley amounts, but the cannons should lose their ragdoll capability, with both the cannons and grenade launchers getting a lengthier cooldown in between bursts. Heaven forbid you have more than 2 Warstriders on you, then you will be in a world of pain. Not even an abstract pain, just straight pain. 3 or more Warstriders mixed in with all of the other bot forces on the field, your death and a few more is fast approaching. That's the big one, but there are a few more that need no introduction. Dragonroaches. We all know its visuals don't match the fire breath too well and could use a consistency fix. That, in addition to it being harder to kill and more lethal than its Bile Titan cousins, could use some sort of grounding mechanic. Being able to damage its wings to the point we'd knock it out of the sky to get a clear shot on its head and other assorted squishy bits while crawling on the ground. Plus a possible nest mechanic that reduces the active spawn rate of Dragonroaches could be on the table as well. Not eliminating spawns like stalkers, but reducing the number of active roaches, making sure we don't see recreations of that one scene of Raid of Fire having the sky clouded with nothing but dragons. Because let's be honest, multiple Dragonroaches alone are problem enough without the rest of the Terminid swarm on your backs. Impalers could use some tweaks too. Supposedly, Vlad bugs extend its fangs towards Helldivers in line of sight and will retract once losing sight of its prey. Too often though do I come under attack from an Impaler, nowhere in sight. Not even a case of the bug seeing me when I can't, more like he's on the other side of some buildings with no clear line of sight and he's still attacking. And often also attacking from beyond the grave, as catching Impalers right as they extend often ends with the Impaler dead and its tentacles still extending going as far as spawning and even managing attacks while the source is currently a corpse. As much as it may be janky, would prefer a complete death wipe of Impaler tentacles on death. If they exist, then immediately retract, and if they are actively spawning off screen, just straight up delete them. As a final note for the Termitids, the Hunter's Pounce could use a little consistency tweak. I've noticed a few occurrences of a Hunter Pounce looking like Destiny 2 Sword Magnetism, where a Hunter jumps sideways while being magnetic and gravitating towards me at a ridiculous angle. I'm fine with the long jump distance allowing it to get Helldivers in hard to reach spots, but the wonky jumps, not so much. Now before we get into the Illuminate as a whole, why do both bots and bugs have the mechanic where an enemy dies while calling for backup and another enemy immediately calls for help, resulting in either you killing the whole pack one by one, or the more likely outcome of enemy reinforcement showing? Mentally, I think, if any of the troops are capable of signaling for backup, why not just have all of them do it? May just be me though. Moving on to the squids. Like I mentioned, there hasn't been many changes as a whole since the introduction aside from the additions of more enemy types and a few tweaks. Leviathan's getting a handful of nerfs, Harvester's getting a tweak to its anti-tank vulnerability, changes to Overseer's unarmored fleshy bits, Warp ships getting increased shields on deployment, and an allegedly undocumented change to Voteless shoulders and how they bleed out from shoulder destruction. But that is all that's changed with the Illuminate since they released almost 10 months ago. Likely contributes to why the Illuminate are a different level of struggle compared to the other factions. Case in point, I find having 4 chargers on me less of a threat than 2 Fleshmobs. 20 variants of Devastators are less of a threat than 10 variants of Overseers, if you get what I mean. Voteless in terms of health and durability are fine. While humans are generally squishy, the Voteless are basically zombies running on anti-democracy instinct and nothing else. So why they take a few rounds to put down makes sense even if the random swarming from all sides seems fair when dealing with a swarm from one angle and a random few come at me from off angles being a pest. The variety of Overseers could use some health tweaking to increase the kill consistency. Hitting an Overseer with an Interrupter shot could be anywhere between 1 and 3 shots to kill even hitting them directly. I know in the end of the day some weapons can one-shot to the head, but as a whole it seems like Overseers are more tanky than they should be, especially for the ranged units. I get that they only have light armor and light weapons can take them down just fine, but the ranged Overseers should theoretically have lighter armor than the melee units. Individually, I hate elevated Overseers with a burning passion. They are better stalkers than stalkers themselves, firing multiple large bursts of rounds when it can kill a Helldiver in 3 shots. Always flying, never hitting the ground for any reason but death. Flying over and through buildings constantly, being able to keep track of you no matter where you run, and putting you in a world of hurt when there's a pack of them on your tail. Add to it the inconsistent health pool and constant moving, making shots on target difficult. Elevated Overseers need a cooldown on flight time. Plain and simple. I can deal with the lethality of their plasma rifle if they weren't as stubborn, sticking to you like carrion flies on rotting flesh. Then Crescent Overseers. I know they are supposed to be artillery support, but it is so annoying to be dealing with the Illuminate for a random pack of Crescent Overseers to post up a mile away, start sending rounds, and never moving anywhere again, needing to hunt them down while being hounded by Voteless Overseers and other assorted issues. Another case of needing a cooldown period between rounds or a potential change to movement patterns, moving around after sending a few rounds to just check and see if they're actually hitting their targets, as opposed to just sending rounds and magically knowing they actually made connection. Touching on Watchers, as much as their health pool feels inconsistent when throwing rounds at it, even surviving some hefty explosives like the Eruptor, I know it can be specific parts taking damage and thus not the main health pool and why they live through more than expected. However, like elevated Overseers, they fly into, through, and over buildings, even mega city skyscrapers. Mega annoying to see a purple light doing your best to take it out before it calls for help, just for the Watcher, or Watchers, to go inside a building and go straight vertical. Hope the devs can adjust the pathing for the various seeds so they don't morph into and above the terrain. On to Stingrays. They aren't the worst thing you will have to face, but the randomness in their appearance is dreadful. Case in point, often they circle city maps seemingly unable to find an attack path to the point you leave them alone just to show up at the worst time possible. Stingrays aren't threats until they show up while dealing with other Illuminate forces, then they are a major issue. My hope is, like my idea for Dragonroaches, there is a secondary objective like an Illuminate airbase created that reduces the frequency of Stingray spawns. I know they can be deterred with the SAM site, but they are never guaranteed to be present or to hit their target. Now the tripods. Harvesters are annoyingly balanced. I know they are a heavy unit and have lighter armor than usual heavy units, thus what they lack in durability they make up for in firepower and shields. Since the shields can be disabled permanently, I don't think they need to be addressed. Now, as much as I hate it when a shield comes back while my ultimatum shot is in flight that then blows up in my face. However, The big laser. Yet another case of a cooldown period needing to happen. The laser itself can rip through literally anything it hits, with a very lengthy active time on its death beam only temporarily stopping when you escape its sight, which is very temporary considering it will demolish your cover moments after. Trying to manage a horde of Illuminate determined to rip you apart, adding to it suddenly dodging a laser makes avoiding the horde incredibly difficult. Handling 100 squids becomes much more likely to result in a reinforcement when you throw laser Limbo on top of it. And rounding up the last entry for these dishonorable mentions, Fleshmobs, or as me and my friends call them, piece of Fleshmobs. I know their shtick is being unarmored balls of flesh able to withstand massive punishment, being they are multiple voteless corpses mushed into an amalgam of hell no. If they were a slow-moving bullet sponge able to punish you severely if you let them get too close, it'd be perfectly appropriate. But they are straight up better chargers than Terminated chargers. In terms of their strengths over chargers, Fleshmobs appear in greater number at literally any difficulty. Yes, Fleshmobs even show up in level 1 missions. While unarmored and more vulnerable to a wider variety of weapons, Fleshmobs often take much longer to put down in comparison to chargers, needing a large amount of bullets and explosives versus chargers that can be easily removed with something like a single thermite grenade or a well-placed expendable anti-tank shot. In terms of charging, Fleshmobs are harder to avoid mid-charge, being that its four arms flail wildly while approaching, creating a wide plow, and charges more frequently than chargers. Plus, chargers can run into something and be stopped, while very few things can interrupt a Fleshmob's charge. Gas can make it turn off course, and urchin grenades can hold it until the grenade is done stunning, which it will immediately continue to charge afterwards. All in all, Fleshmobs should not be a better charger than chargers. Take Hulk Scorchers for example. While they run right at you, it's at a speed you can outrun. Plus it's likely you will survive if caught by the flamethrower, while also being able to dodge the buzzsaw. While light and medium weapons can take on its front armor, Heavy Pen can very quickly dispatch a Hulk through its eye. It's a good way to make something like a charger while not overshadowing the bullish bug. In terms of how I'd change the Fleshmobs, as an extreme, I'd say it needs to lose the charge. It already walks fast enough to be a problem when there's 2 or 3 Fleshmobs mixed in a horde of Voteless. At the very minimum, reducing the stamina Fleshmobs have for charging, reducing the frequency of charges or how far it can run in a charge. If you watch it, Fleshmobs actually run a real freaking long distance if its target is still out of reach, oftentimes running from Fleshmobs just to have a pack of elevated overseers following the fleshies and being a massive pain in the ass. Now upon some reflection, while some Illuminate for sure need some tweaks and nerfs, it could be also the lack of variety in terms of Illuminate troops. Illuminate only have 9 different units including their 2 air support units of Leviathans and Stingrays. Meanwhile, the Automatons have about 20 different enemy units including gunships. In terms of heavy units, the bots have 3 different Hulks, 3 different tanks, and factory striders for heavy units. Not including war striders because allegedly tanks don't spawn if super chickens are present. Anyways, the bots have 7 different heavy units, while the Illuminate only have Fleshmobs and harvesters. If a drop at level 10 is supposed to have, let's say 5 heavy units among medium and light units, you can have 2 ranged Hulks with 1 Scorcher Hulk and 2 tanks. Meanwhile, an Illuminate drop with 5 heavies can be 1 harvester and 4 Fleshmobs among dozens of Voteless and a bunch of overseers. The limited amount of troops available can contribute to the Illuminate patrols and reinforcements having a lot more of one type of enemy, and thus creating a bigger problem than something like a pack of bugs being a brood commander, some spewers, a charger, and a mix of hunters, pouncers, and scavengers. If the squids get more units on the field, we may see less concentrations of annoying enemies, but I would also hope the Illuminate as a whole can be more enjoyable. I can take on automatons and terminids at any level with very limited negative emotions. Meanwhile, fighting Illuminate in any form drains my patience faster than a wild Karen. In the end, I know Illuminate were made to be a bit of a higher skill requirement than the other 2 factions. Rechargeable overshields, the first faction you fought in colonies and megacities, rank and file Voteless more belligerent and numerous than troopers and any small bugs. However you look at it, Illuminate are the least preferred faction to fight when there is no major order to follow. Even though the defense of Silver Earth was initially very entertaining, Illuminate got old real quick. We fought so much alien calamari in just a few days, I didn't want to deal with blue blood staining my armor for at least 2 months afterwards. On top of the performance issues in the game, I think the Illuminate are a problem point when it comes to Helldivers as a whole. In terms of fun, the squids just aren't fun. I can mess around with loadouts at any point with the bots and bugs, but with the squids, I default to metas often just for the sake of getting shit done. I don't like that. I like using odd loadouts and succeeding. That's not likely to happen with the Illuminate. Either way, this is the end of the video. Let me know in the comments what enemies in Helldivers 2 do you think need some form of nerfs or tweaks. I know I did not discuss anything like Predator Stalkers or Conflagration Devastators, because as a whole, they are supposed to be curveballs wrecking the norms of fighting a faction, adding some spice to fighting the factions we've grown accustomed to. They are also temporary. However, things like Fleshmobs, Warstriders, and Impalers will always be present on the battlefield, so you end up suffering more often when something is in need of a tweak, while also being present for the foreseeable future. Regardless, if you enjoy this video, a like and subscribe helps out a lot in terms of getting my video out there. I'd like to think this is a common sense take on the balance of Helldivers 2, and will be happy if literally anything happens to some of the named enemies I discussed. Will be sad if the Illuminate continue to be not so enjoyable, but I'll just continue avoiding purple space as much as possible, barring major order requirements. On that note, my name is the Mad Scorpion, and I will see you in the next video.